Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into the minds of ancient legal scholars to solve a puzzle that's over 2,000 years old. The question is simple, but the answer is anything but. How does what we intend to do actually shape the world around us? Let's crack this code.
So let's start with something simple. Imagine you write a really heartfelt birthday card for a friend. You pour your thoughts onto the page, but then, for whatever reason, you decide not to give it to them. Could your roommate just, grab that card, cross out the name, and give it to their friend? No way, right? It just feels wrong. That card was meant for a specific person for a specific moment. That gut feeling you have, that's the key that's going to unlock this whole ancient legal debate.
Okay, so our investigation starts with something way more serious than a birthday card, a bill of divorce. The ancient sages, these were brilliant thinkers, really. They were obsessed with one question: what makes a legal document like this actually valid? And the answer they found tells us something huge about the power of our intentions.
Let's look at a couple of scenarios they chewed on. First, you've got two guys, both named John. And get this, their wives have the same name too. So the first John writes up a divorce bill, but then has second thoughts. Can the second John just take that pre-written document and use it for his own divorce? The sages said absolutely not. Invalid. Okay, case two. A man has two wives, both named Sarah. He writes a divorce bill for the older Sarah, then changes his mind. Can he just use that same document for the younger Sarah? Again, nope. Invalid. A clear pattern is starting to emerge, right? You can't just recycle these documents, even if all the names happen to match up.
But here's the thing about the sages. They never, ever settled for the easy answer. They love to play devil's advocate with their own ideas. So they said, hang on, maybe the problem in those cases was that the document was already earmarked for a specific person. They're pushing themselves, asking a tougher question. What if a scribe just wrote up a generic divorce document with no names on it yet? Could that work? They're basically stress testing their own logic to see if it holds up.
And all of this questioning, this constant poking and prodding at the idea, it leads them to the smoking gun, the one piece of evidence that settles the argument for good. And the final proof? It was hiding in plain sight, in the rulebook for scribes. A scribe could totally pre-write all the standard legal jargon on a divorce form. But, and this is the crucial part, they were strictly forbidden from filling in the most important details: the name of the husband, the name of the wife, the date, and that final, powerful sentence. All of those had to be written specifically for the couple, right then and there. And that gives us our first huge takeaway. Let's call it the specificity principle. It sounds simple, but it's actually pretty profound. For a legal act to have any real power, it can't be generic. It has to be created with a specific intention for a specific person at a specific moment in time. Okay, so rule number one is locked in, but believe it or not, this is where the puzzle actually gets interesting.
So now that they've got this principle, the sages do what great thinkers always do. They take their shiny new rule and they test it somewhere completely different to see if it breaks. They pivot from the courthouse to the temple to the complex world of sacred offerings. And what they found there seemed to flip everything completely upside down.
Okay, this is where it gets a little weird. Let's say someone brings an animal for a sin offering, but in their head, they're thinking about something else. If they're thinking of it as a different kind of offering, like a burnt offering, then the whole act is invalid. That kind of fits our specificity principle. But, and get this, if their intention is just to treat it as regular, non-sacred meat for dinner, somehow the offering is still valid. How is that even possible?
And this leads us to a second totally competing rule: the same type principle. In the world of offerings, it seems an improper intention only messes things up if it's for something in the same category. Thinking of one sacred offering as another sacred offering, that's a problem. But thinking of it as something from a completely different world, like just regular food, the original sacred act somehow holds up.
So, you see the problem, right? We've now got two major principles, both pulled from ancient law, and they seem to be in a total head-on collision. And this, right here, is the heart of the whole mystery.
This is the question that must have driven the sages crazy. How can the universe run on two totally different sets of logic? On one hand, for a divorce, any tiny deviation from the specific intent makes the whole thing null and void. But on the other hand, for an offering, only an error of a similar kind even matters. Something is just not adding up. So let's just put them side by side. You've got the specificity principle from divorce law that demands perfection, and then you have the same type principle from offerings that seems way more relaxed. It's like having two detectives with two completely opposite theories about the same crime. And just when you think it can't get any more confusing, a third clue shows up that throws another wrench in the works.
Okay, stick with me, because this one is a bit of a mind-bender. According to the laws of ritual purity, if you have an impure earthenware pot, the very air inside it becomes impure. But if you put a clean metal bowl inside that impure pot, any food inside the metal bowl stays perfectly pure. It's protected. Do you see the problem? A different type of material, metal versus earthenware, has a massive, game-changing effect. It acts like a shield. This completely blows the same type principle from the offerings out of the water.
So at this point, we are tangled in a serious web of contradictions. Divorce, temple offerings, ritual purity, they all seem to play by their own set of rules. But the solution, as the sages eventually figured out, wasn't about finding one single rule to unite them all. No, the answer was right there in the text the whole time.
And here it is, the first aha moment that cracks the offering puzzle. The sages realized the same type rule wasn't just some abstract philosophical idea. It came directly from the specific wording of this verse in Leviticus. The text literally says sacred items desecrate sacred items. This led them to a hyper-specific conclusion for this one context. Only something sacred can mess up something else sacred. An intention for regular old meat? It's not sacred, so it's in a different league and doesn't have an effect.
And the level of precision they found is just wild. They noticed that the rules actually change depending on which part of a verse you're looking at. The phrase, for a sin offering, is all about the type of sacrifice. But the phrase, and he shall be forgiven, is about the owner of that sacrifice. So the rules for messing up the type are different from the rules for messing up the owner, because each rule is anchored to a totally different set of words in the text.
Okay, so what about our last puzzle? That crazy vessel within a vessel thing. How in the world did they solve that contradiction? Well, the answer wasn't some big, sweeping principle. It was found in a single word repeated in one verse. And that number was 4.
The sages noticed that the Hebrew word for interior shows up 4 times in a single verse, and they realized this wasn't just repetitive. Each instance was teaching a separate, unique little rule. One usage created the basic rule of impurity, but another, crucially, created the very specific exception for the interior of an interior, which is exactly our vessel within a vessel scenario. So the solution wasn't one grand theory at all. It was an act of incredible textual precision, where every single word and every repetition builds another unique piece of a massive, intricate legal mosaic.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We started this whole journey with a simple birthday card, and we ended up deep inside a logical system that is just breathtakingly complex. What it reveals is a worldview where the universe isn't governed by a few big, sweeping laws. Instead, it's run by an intricate network of incredibly specific principles, each one carefully, painstakingly derived from a sacred text. And it makes you wonder, what does it mean to build an entire world where truth isn't found in broad strokes, but in the careful, devoted, and sacred analysis of every single word?